Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am so excited today because I have Keith Matejka, owner and extraordinaire of Thunderworks Games. Say hello, Keith.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And I'm excited because today you are launching Dawn of Ulos on Kickstarter. This is your 11th Kickstarter campaign, if I'm not mistaken. And what we're going to do is I have on this channel, I do a Kickstarter, what I did differently, campaign after campaign, like what trends I'm following, how I'm changing shipping, etc. And we were talking about something we could do along with this Kickstarter, and you suggested we do what Keith has done differently. And I think it's great. I think it's super fascinating. And so we're going to do it.
Yeah, today's the day.
And let me just lead also that you are no, Kickstarter newbie, right? As I said, 11th campaign.
Right.
You've generated over $2 million in revenue across your campaigns, across 33,000 pledges. Now, some of those people are going to be the same people, but that is huge. That is huge. You are almost in the top 100 top grossing Kickstarter creators. You're getting there. This campaign might do it. This might get you those last places, though it starts doing that like CMON craziness. But so your very first campaign was Bullfrogs, and you moved up, and then you did Role Player, which wasn't as big a campaign as the product began.
Right.
And Blend Off. Those are like early days, and then you've since done all these other ones. But so, let's get into it. When it comes to this campaign, Dawn of Ulos, and maybe give like a quick what this game is, just so everyone has a basis. Tell us how you've approached it differently this time around.
Yeah, so Dawn of Ulos is a fantasy economic game, 1 to 5 players. It takes about 90 minutes. It's you play as these various gods, and you're manipulating these different factions of characters that are coming into the world, and you're doing you're basically kind of buying cards for each one of these factions, which is similar to buying a stock. You're investing in them, and then you see them grow, and your cards get more powerful. And then when these different factions on the board connect, then they're in conflict, and everybody around the table is playing cards to try to help the factions that they're most interested in win the conflict. And then as a result, one takes over the other one's land, and cards become more or less valuable, and just like a volatile stock market in a lot of ways. But so Very cool. It's super fun game, and we are on Kickstarter right now. So this Kickstarter in particular, like it's been a long time since I ran one. So I think the last one was over a year ago, which was for the lockup expansion called Breakout. So the world continues to change. The environment at Kickstarter, what backers are doing are changing. So it's like important to keep an eye on that and kind of adjust. Like with any kind of marketing, like what worked today isn't necessarily going to work tomorrow.
For sure.
And sometimes you just got to just try new things and see what sticks. So this time around, like I have Kirk Dennison on board, which is like a new employee over at Thunderworks Games, and he's run his own Kickstarters before, so he has a lot of opinions about how Kickstarters should be run,
very exciting.
may or may not be exactly how I traditionally run them. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do, kind of as a manager of people, and like as the company grows, is like let other people run with it, right? Like it doesn't have to be how Keith thinks it should be all the time. I mean, sometimes I do like it to be a little bit.
But I actually think this is a really important inflection point. It'll be good to talk about some of the campaign specifics, but generally, right, being, a growing organization, actually bringing on employees. And we've had, maybe I'll link it, but we've had other interviews about Thunderworks Games as it's changed over the years as you've grown it as a company. But getting to that point where when a company that is a Kickstarter-based organization, like these Pencil First Games is an example. There's tons of examples where like Kickstarter's made this indie board game small publisher possible.
Right.
As that lead creator, getting to that point where you're like, yeah, actually, what's different is I am not doing the entire Kickstarter myself, or actually not even, because always, it's not uncommon to get help, but actually being like, no, I'm handing this responsibility to somebody else within my organization, and then supporting them with the death crystal in their chest running down them, and so that's a really big. Pencil First Games isn't at that point. Ourselves, we Jessica does more and more, but I'm still sort of like driving it, but definitely shifting. But I do get the impression from you that for this one you were like, I wasn't in the room, but like really handed it to Kirk to drive, right?
For sure. So I kind of originally set up the Kickstarter page kind of like how I traditionally do, using kind of similar assets and like building it the way that we've always done it. And some of that is just kind of historical. It worked before, so we should do it that way again, kind of thing. And so in this particular project, like I got it to a certain point. I take the page to how I envision it being, to like 80%, 70%. And then coincidentally, I went on vacation for a week, and I said, hey, Kirk, go finish the page. So, I come back and I look at the page, and like, it doesn't look anything like how I usually would do these things. So, and there's that initial moment of shock, like, but at the end of the day.
And I think, hold on, and for those watching, it should be clear that, like me, Keith reacts to shock with like aggression and surprise and like a sense of like the first reaction is like, what are you doing? And then it calms down.
Right.
So I'm sure that was a fun.
Yeah. And then, you kind of, get past that and you take a look at it and you're like, there's a lot of thought that has been put into this. There's reasons why these things were changed. And like the way that they're presenting information is probably better than what I've done before. And like, surprise, surprise, you get kind of stuck in the way that you do certain things. So it actually became really exciting for me. Like, it was like a surprise every time I check out the Kickstarter, and we'd go through it and I'd give him feedback along the way. But definitely I let him, and he worked directly with Stephen Kerr, graphic designer who works both for Pencil First Games and for Thunderworks, who's also a close personal friend of mine. But they work together, and we're just kind of jamming on it. And I would check it out every once in a while and give them feedback. But at the end of the day, I kind of would default to whatever those guys thought was best.
Right.
If it felt like a sideways move or it wasn't 100%, I didn't have a great reason why it should go back to something else, then I was like, well, let's just try it your guys' way,
And I actually just heard to interject. I think that's an important point because for better for worse, you get into a habit, and it's part of like a matter of efficiency. But for example, with Pencil First Games, if you look at our last, 5-6 campaigns, see, there's differences, nuances, but there's like a vibe to a Pencil First Games Kickstarter page, and it's really because they get blocked out the same way they've been blocked out with the little plus one, -1 changes, right? Like we haven't done any major iteration that I haven't described, and like it's sort of like a Pencil First Games rule book where you're like, oh, these are sort of laid out the same way. It's like, because that's how Ed lays out a rule book, and he starts with the last one and he lays it out on top of it. Okay, but perhaps that's actually the best way to talk about this, which is like what were some of the big changes that Kirk made to your layout where you were like, what, or like which ones stand out to you?
So like in the past there was much more like, here's a fancy banner, and then here's some text that's in the Kickstarter page, which, as I assume people know that at this point that the tools that Kickstarter gives us to make Kickstarter pages are pretty much the worst possible thing you can imagine. But like in the past, it was just like banner, throw some text in, banner, throw them some text in, and like this time around, those guys are like integrating the headers into the graphic, making things flow much nicer. There's like one of the negative pieces there, one of the disadvantages is that it's, you can't search for text in an image, but in terms of presentation, it's much nicer, and it creates like much more cohesive, like, kind of telling the reader or the viewer like how they're supposed to digest the information instead of just kind of like, just jamming it between images and stuff. So
yeah, for sure. And I actually think that's an interesting one because even I did a little review of the page and I called that out. It is certainly the case more and more, especially with higher tier campaigns, that you get this image with all of the text embedded in the image, and for some of the reasons you mentioned, and I've been a little reluctant to make those changes, but it's certainly like that's not like a rare thing. Like many do that approach.
For sure.
And I thought, I've seen the page, I think they, and anyone else, because it's live, think it did a really nice job. It's important, I think, when people take that approach, just to make sure, like, sometimes people go crazy and they go like really small text or like really wacky fonts. Not speaking about this campaign, but like legibility is still important. Like, just because you can be super fancy, like
Right.
just like keep that in mind. But yeah, so that is a big shift from yours, and I would say to some extent some of your older campaigns were even are on the simpler side. If you're like, I got my key banner, I drop my text in. I got my key banner, I drop my text in. It
Right.
definitely, this new one looks much more, you know, I'm going to use full.
I think more professional maybe, or maybe. But like from in the past, it was somewhat the result of doing it myself, right? Like my skill sets are limited. I can get some help with some banners, but like I didn't have the kind of full-time help from like a graphic designer to really tweak these things and make them look amazing. It was like, I have limited tools. I got to get this done. I don't have any money to pay anybody or any favors to call in. So I could only kind of get it so far on my own. And that was kind of like, scratching that last 10% was really hard for me, just because it was just me. But now that I've got more people helping, like they can leverage their skills,
And I think that's also important because I get to watch this show from afar, or maybe not quite that far. But when you're running a business, designing games, and running Kickstarters, and this is about you, but I think a lot of people,
Sure.
I think it's not like you didn't have access to a graphic designer per se, but what ends up happening, I think, and what I've seen with is that because there's all these other things going on and all these other responsibilities, the Kickstarter page becomes something that happens sort of late or quicker than you'd want. So I think one of the advantages here that I've seen is you being able to be like, I'm going to pass this off to somebody that isn't going to be interrupted or who can start it earlier or devote more time and more consistent time, is not as an owner, you're like absolutely interrupt driven, right? Like you're like, oh, I have to take care of this. I have to there's this other thing on this other project. And so getting somebody who can just focus on it, I think, it also allows it to bake more and cook more. Because I mean, Thunderworks Games under your direction has made some really fantastic, gorgeous products. So it's really giving the time to have that translate to the Kickstarter page.
Right, and my personal love is in the product. Like as much as I understand that marketing and sales and all this stuff is super important, my love is for the game. So that's always my number one focus. But then when it comes to getting the page together or whatever, it's it's not as high a priority, and it suffers as a result. I mean, in terms of things coming together late, I mean, like the Role Player Adventures Kickstarter page, like I literally and I hadn't done this since college, but like pulled an all-nighter, like getting it ready to go. I think I took like a 30-minute nap like before I woke back up and pressed the launch button. It was like insane. And like there was like I was saying to myself, I never want to do this ever again. Like I've got to get better at kind of getting the page into that high level of quality sooner. And in terms of like just doing things like sooner, like getting when you have to communicate with other people besides just like solving problems as they come up as a single person, like now if there's other people involved, then there's like people are asking questions and they want like some kind of schedule as to when things are going to be happening, and then so that forces me to get more organized, and I think that this page benefited from that for sure.
And so, okay, so one big change here was and it should be said as in the prologue to this, or whatever it's called, the intro,
Right.
those sort of more bare, less heavy-handed Thunderworks traditional Kickstarter certainly were successful, right? Like it didn't, your basic pages didn't stop you from rocking and rolling. And so it'll be interesting to see with this level up. It's really hard because it's like this game versus like what's this game versus Cartographers versus Lockup versus Roleplay. So like it's a different product, right? But seeing how that page continues to support the game and drive it, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's always like the hard thing to kind of figure out, or in terms of like what is the ROI on putting an extra 5 hours into a Kickstarter page? Are we going to get 0 extra pledges? Or are we going to get like, an extra $20,000? Like you don't know. You just want to present as clean, as positive. You want it to look as good as it can look. And then you just cross your fingers and hope it made some kind of impact. But you never really know.
Yeah. One of the things I've found is that a a lot of times the assets you create for the Kickstarter becomes like a good starter kit for marketing materials as you roll into, retail or distribution or whatever. Okay, but so we talked about the layout. So and that was really like presentation. Right. What are some other changes that are different from previous campaigns?
So the big change is, Kirk says to me, we got to get our pre-campaign marketing started. And I've never been super big into like pre-campaign marketing, to a fault. I mean, it's definitely something. Having lots of people there the first day is super important for the kind of success for projects. This is just an area that I never invested a ton of time into. And he says, hey, we need to start pre-marketing 8 weeks before the launch of the Kickstarter. I was like, 8 weeks? That's a long time. And there's just this philosophy that like some people need like 7 touches of a product to really kind of internalize for people to make a purchasing decision. So, so I'd never done that before in terms of like doing lots of marketing ahead of time. But we decided to on this project. So we started like maybe 7 weeks ahead of the project, and we created a landing page that was kind of separate from the Thunderworks page, that was separate from the BGG page, that was separate from the Kickstarter page.
DawnofUlos.com.
That's right. So we registered a URL and made a landing page, and the drive was to collect email addresses. I mean, we have a large, and loyal group of people on our mailing list, but we wanted to see if we can get some more, and let's drive using that, at least for the first part of the pre-campaign marketing. So we actually hired a marketing company, and in the past, Mr. Independent Creators, like, I do everything myself. These guys are all rip-offs. Nobody knows the products like I do. They're gonna just suck my money away. But in this specific instance, like the team that we kind of usually does marketing for Thunderworks wasn't as available, and Kirk had used this company before with some success, so we decided to give them a shot. So we used a company called Next Level Web, and they've been managing kind of all the A/B testing on Facebook ads. They did some of the creative, but we created a lot of assets for them, but kind of gave them feedback on their the assets they created, and so then they've been like managing, how much advertising we're doing, focusing mainly on Facebook, but doing some other platforms as well, and then just cycling in new ads, kind of slowly revealing more about the game over this kind of long period of time. And we've collected quite a few email addresses, and then as we've gotten closer, we revealed an asset last weekend for like the Kickstarter video, and did some additional promoting around that. And we're just really trying to, as they say, prime the pump in terms of just making sure we have a solid first day. Now, obviously, we're recording this in the past, and if you're watching this right now, you'll know whether it was kind of successful or not before we do now.
But even that is hard, right? And I actually have some questions of it, but like, the Thunderworks Games newsletter, I don't know how many people are on it, but it's a double confirmed, robust Thunderworks dedicated newsletter. And whenever you launch a campaign, it blows out of the gate, right? Like you having a strong, first few hours isn't that always happens.
Right.
So you'll have a better sense of, and that's just where it gets hard. Like, let's say it performs what you normally have seen, and then it's like, well, was it that the title needed the extra? Like, did it need the marketing to perform as well as the other ones, or did the marketing not do it? Or if it double performs, was it the game that made it perform? Or so it is always hard. A couple questions I had though, because Pencil First Games has done marketing before a campaign, though generally I would describe us as you've described, as pretty limited pre-marketing, like awareness but not marketing spend, right? Like free social media marketing, not like, hey, let's hire a firm or go this route. So I don't have like a tie-in on that vantage point, but I guess I have two questions. So one is, it looks like you did this DawnofUlos.com. You set up the landing page, which because I went there while we're talking, is gorgeous. It's a really nice showcase of the title. So that's cool in and of itself. And actually, you know what? We did something like that for Skull Hollow once. But you did this page, and you're collecting email for it. So, which to me is to say you're not using the Kickstarter pre-launch page. Is that correct, or are you doing both?
So for the first probably 5-6 weeks, we kind of focus only on the landing page. And then in the last week or so, we've been directing people to the Kickstarter page, mainly to capture the people who, like, they want to know about the project, but they're not comfortable giving you their email address.
Sure.
So, so it gives them a place to be notified that doesn't require, like, handing.
Yeah, it's the Kickstarter system. But so you've done both. And
Right.
But I assume, because you don't want to like over email people, I assume that you haven't pointed your email group at the pre-launch page, but you're going to hold it until the campaign's live and then throw people at it, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how we did it, but some of the things that we did that I thought was kind of interesting is that, like, when we collected an email address on that landing page, we immediately replied and gave them like a wallpaper using some of the artwork.
Oh, that's fun.
It's like, hey, thanks for getting on the list. Here's a little freebie. It doesn't take a lot of effort, but I think it's a nice gesture. And then
for sure,
people that are on the list, on our mailing list, we sent them an email 3 days ahead of time to kind of show them some of the metal coins that we're going to be offering, show them before anybody else gets a chance to look at it. So, I always want to try to find, if people are trying to becoming part of the community around Thunderworks, I want to provide value. I want to figure out, like, what can I give these people, like, that other people don't get. I don't want them to feel like I'm just on another mailing list. It's like, oh, the Thunderworks guys, they send us like freebie stuff, or they give us information that other people don't have ahead of time, like, just to encourage people to continue to want to be on the list and feel like we appreciate them.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. Okay, so I guess one other question I have, and we don't have to be like super specific, but in terms of you're working with this ad agency or marketing agency,
yeah.
which is, and there are many different approaches, and there's Gel Up and other groups, but I'm curious, what model is this? Is this the one where essentially you're paying for the ads and they'll get a premium, or are they on a retainer, or or is it a back end? Like, what's the model? Like, you don't have to give the like specific percentages,
right.
but just generally.
There's no percentage of Kickstarter sales or anything like that. There's no it's just we get a certain amount of their time, and we pay a flat fee that's negotiated, and just the responsibilities are outlined clearly. So
you really just hired this firm to effectively be an advanced contractor to help with the management of text.
Right. So a lot of the content we're building, and then we're also building some of our own content that they're taking advantage of as well, in terms of creating ads out of the other content we're building. So the main content creator for online is for Thunderworks is Scott Bogan, who does a lot of our web stuff. So in the past, he would set up the ads and do the A/B testing, in addition to like building the Board Game Geek ads and communicating with like Chad over at BGG to get the ads up and all the stuff. So this time around, because this ad agency was handling all the A/B stuff and like setting up the ads, so Scott could really focus on creating awesome content, which is truly what he loves anyway. So we kind of took like a job that one guy was doing, but he was stretched kind of thin, and really kind of said, okay, you're only going to do this really important part that you love and that you're good at, and then we're going to hire this other company to do the stuff that you hate and that they're experts at anyway.
It's always fun when that happens.
There's kind of nice kind of division of labor, and that's, I think, as Thunderworks grow, that I'm just going to see more of that, where as a content creator, as a publisher, you've got all these hats. You're trying to figure out how to get some of them on other people, and the end product, everything ends up being better because you can get experts on certain things, and they have more time to dedicate on those particular things and get better at them. But obviously, when you're small and you're working out of your basement, just trying to scrape together, one more pledge it's a little bit different than kind of unless you're on
For sure, for sure.
your 10th or 11th Kickstarter campaign.
And so when it comes to a budgeting, because I think with some of the other marketing agencies, but from a budgeting perspective, you simply say, hey, we've determined to pay this organization this amount of money per month for 3 months or this flat rate. And then that's just a product expense that gets bundled into all of your evaluations.
Right. It's tough when some of those companies will do like a percentage of, like they'll allocate certain pledges to the work that they did,
right,
and a certain percentage of that. I'm always kind of suspect of those, like tracking, like people allocating certain sales to them, which maybe really wasn't. And then also you can't control that cost. You don't know what it's going to be, and that makes me nervous. Right? This is always initially it's already an experiment for me, and then.
But it's nice that somebody in your team has history with this organization, right, and all that.
100%.
Stuff,
right? There's that made the decision a lot easier. And I mean, I think that's true with anything where you're trying to do something new and you ask your friends for recommendations and things that they've experienced.
Sure, for sure.
Whatever. So I think I wouldn't just get an email from a random marketing company and then just say, yeah, let's
don't respond to those. Don't respond to those. You'll get tons of, starting today though, you'll get some. I have a couple I haven't responded to that are still pinging me about, like, we see you just launched your Hanafuda Tori Kickstarter campaign. And it's like, that was 3 months ago, guys. Okay, so actually, I mean, I think this is awesome information. Let's but we're going into pretty good detail. So that first one was this sort of presentation change. We have this marketing change on the front end. What's another big change?
So I don't know if it's a big change, but in my last Kickstarter, like I think the last 2 Kickstarters, we didn't do much for stretch goals. I think even the Cartographer's Heroes ones, we didn't do any. And that's always, like, stretch goals is always a hot topic for Kickstarter. Some people love them, some people hate them. I think in general the community has kind of sees through the kind of the fakeness of them in a lot of ways. So I've always struggled with them in recent years, and especially because I try not to do any kind of Kickstarter exclusive stuff. But this time around, we are doing some Kickstarter exclusive add-ons. So we're doing some metal coins. We've done things like that in the past, but we haven't done it recently. And we're kind of doing, in terms of doing things the same. I like to do a little mini expansion. You do too. That kind of comes with the.
Sure.
But we are going to do some stretch goals this time around, and some of them. There's a couple that are pretty big that, like, could legitimately, like, ship without it. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you see stretch goals and they plan them well ahead of time, and they're just going to make sure that they hit them, and then it's just kind of a dog and pony show to, have something to get excited and talk about. But there's definitely some in this one they're clearly, like, I could do without for sure. But they're there if it blows up. They're, like, kind of the true spirit of what stretch goals were in the past. So
though, if I'm not mistaken, they're as the layout of the page I saw for the opportunity to give you feedback, you haven't revealed those yet, though, right? Like, the ones that I saw were just like there was like an early one or two, like, they reveal as you go, but you're not using it as a, hey, there's this great, like, there's no hint of what it is yet, right? Or right. Is there?
I mean, that's the way it is currently on the page.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's part of the hard part about running a Kickstarter that has stretch goals is, like, figuring out what the pacing of those things need to do. There is a real number value in which, like, this thing could exist.
Quantity and stuff, and
like
that.
And then it turns into, like, a like, how comfortable am I with the price of the product? Either going up, or at what level the how many more we're going to print to make it make sense.
Right. Well, so let me ask. Oh, sorry, again.
I was just saying. I mean, you don't really. I've done this before. Maybe I haven't, or maybe I've seen it before. Where, like, or maybe I've just dreamt this. But basically, this idea that, like, if you've got your Kickstarter plan for all your stretch goals, and then you kind of limp out of the gate, and then you can kind of manipulate those numbers to generate some excitement and move some things around, or cut things, or things that people.
Well, yeah, I mean, having a large set of stretch goals and limping out of the gate happens to a lot of people. like the Scythe was the quintessential example of sort of thinking about and changing those Kickstarter. I mean, that was like when Jamie was doing the thing where he was considering the next goal amount based on the previous goal and unlocking it every day, and it was very elaborate. And had some pros and cons, and ultimately I think he adjusted it somewhat on the approach. But so I have a question, and then maybe are you expecting this to be a Kickstarter where you're doing like regular constant updates? Because if you go back to stretch goals, right, you're going back to potentially next one's unlocked. We've unlocked it. Because you've historically done some of those stretch goal based ones, but you've also done the ones where you're like, it's not stretch goals, but I'm going to give you like a piece of lore, or I wrote this story that's going to unfold. Do you have a plan for sort of your update cadence, or does Kirk, is it the same as you've done before, or what flavor?
I mean, I think it's going to be somewhere in between those two models that I've done in the past. When there's a gazillion stretch goals, then you feel like you need to do updates and tell people like, oh my gosh, this is unlocked, and these are some details about the new one coming up. I didn't do nearly as many as I have in the past, so there's kind of just like a strong handful. So I mean, it would be amazing if we just blew through them really fast in terms of funding for the project, but that's not my anticipation. I don't like. I mean, writing updates is fine. Engaging with the community is great. As a backer myself, like I don't like receiving like an update every other day from a project while it's live. Like me personally, I pledge to it. I'm excited about it, and then like I just want to know when it's coming to my house. But other backers prefer different like kind of like amounts of communication. So I think this one will probably be a little bit more frequent during the campaign than the last one, but I don't think it's going to be crazy town unless there's anything can happen during a Kickstarter. That's part of the excitement of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the for sure. I mean, that's the interesting bend, right? Like either like if you're going to do a high volume of updates and communications and player engagement or backer engagement, like I think that's all part of this thing where you're trying to make this Kickstarter period this exciting, information-driven, reactive, like.
Yeah.
Not for everyone, but for a lot of people, they're like in it the whole time and sharing it and talking about it, and you're trying to create something. I feel like if you don't do that, if you're not going to push to get all the way there, I tend to be like what you just said, where like I'm like, we're going to do like a day one in the middle, and one at the end, right? Like I don't like sending a lot, and I think, but part of what happens when you do it that way is you get like it begets the behavior of people just walking away and maybe coming back or not coming back, like. You're not annoying people, but you're also not creating a bed for community either, if you will. And I think there are pros and cons in both. Okay.
I mean, we're going to do a bunch of. I don't think I've done one like this in a while. We're going to do the designer Jason Lentz is going to do a variety of. He's written a bunch of designer diary
those are fun
stuff.
I mean, for the people who like them.
Yeah, well. Well, that's true for almost anything, but yeah. So we'll kind of release that in segments across multiple updates. We'll talk about stretch goals that are completed, but I don't plan on doing like 5 updates a week or anything like that. Like maybe I would like to say three a week.
Well, and are you going to be writing the updates, or Kirk? Is Kirk going to be writing them?
We'll see. I think I'll probably write some of them, and then some of them he will write. And then I will review them and tweak them.
No, sure. I just, it's just like how much of that's, like with Jessica. Jessica didn't ever get to the point where she was writing, updates, but for sure she was engaged in answering community questions, as much as I was. Even in case, the typical format for us would be like, she'd answer a bunch, and then if there was one that seemed sensitive. Like, can you tell us your exact sleeve, plan or something? She'd be like, hey, Ed, I think you should check this one out or whatever. And then I would go and answer it.
Yeah, we're definitely, this time around, the designer Jason is going to be in there answering design questions. And then Kirk and I will also be in there answering, tag teaming different kind of Kickstarter specific or marketing or product specific kind of questions. I miss that excitement of that first day of a Kickstarter. I mean, in when this comes out, I'll be in the thick of it. But like, it's been a long time since we've done it, and the last Kickstarter was an expansion. So, and I don't think expansions kind of tend to have as much of that excitement in the communities. I mean, people want expansions for the games that they love, but it's not like it's not a brand new thing in terms of.
Oh, sure. And I mean, even for the you as a creator, it's a totally different game and approach. Okay, so to close out here, I'm gonna. I mean, I know the page, so I know some of these answers, but basically, I'm gonna ask some reasonably rapid fire questions,
Okay.
and they're like hot button ones, but so like, hey, $1 pledge or no $1 pledge?
Sure. I mean, the one that's built in already is built into the system. I don't even know if you can turn it off anymore.
Right. So you since they so and this is what
I'm not having my dedicated $1 pledge
Right.
from Thunderworks.
No
So
dedicated $1 pledge here, folks.
yeah.
Pledge manager, no pledge manager.
Pledge manager.
Okay, so that means shipping in the campaign or charged after the campaign.
After the campaign. So part of the great thing in the past, I use a pledge manager called Jetbacker, which you used before, which is also
Which is Kirk's.
right. Him and his brother built it.
Yeah.
And I've used it for the last 3 or 4 campaigns. So we're going to use it again. And excuse me. Now getting some alerts on my machine. So now, the guy who runs this thing works for me. So we're definitely going to use Jetpacker again.
Okay. And charging after the campaign for shipping.
That's correct. And we're going
okay.
to do it pretty near to the end of the campaign, maybe a month out. I know some people are kind of waiting till it's right about to ship, but I don't. I think we're gonna ask for that earlier than kind of more in line with what I've done in the past.
Yeah, I tend to be one who likes to wait, but like I don't know. I might suggest letting the calendar year flip over so you have the most information possible in terms of those numbers. But that's neither here nor there. Okay, so what are some other like very common ones? And so you have the robust shipping section. Will you be VAT friendly in the various regions?
For sure, yeah, in Australia and New Zealand and the EU and UK, and yeah, all the good places, and the US too.
Right. and you cover that you are using stretch goals. We talked about updates. I feel like we hit the main ones that come up. Oh, are you going to be will there be a bunch of are you going to use add-ons within the campaign? The add-on feature specifically,
not
the add-on
feature in Kickstarter. No, you have to add it yourself. So and there's the metal coins that you can add on to your pledge
in the pledge manager.
You can do it both in Kickstarter or on the pledge manager. That's correct. And one of the pledge tiers includes the coins.
I see. So just to be specific, not using the add-on features, there's just normal and then with coins. That's two different pledges.
Right. And then you can add more of each one of those things in the pledge manager later. Yeah, some of the questions I always get, are like, if I pledge for $1, can I get access to the pledge manager? The answer to that is yes. And there's no plans for international language versions. So like if you're, you really want a French version, we don't currently have plans for one, but that doesn't mean we couldn't, have one down the road at some point. I've kind of moved to this model where like the kind of dealing with these the non-English language versions kind of can gum up the works in terms of getting the English one done, which can potentially delay backers from getting their games. So I've kind of moved to this model where that I'm not really going to start talking to my international partners and signing these games until the English version is done. We've got the final files. We know what the specs are, so that they can get their quotes accurate and there isn't as much kind of back and forth.
Yeah, there's a decent split. Some folks still try to do all that up front. There's definitely a lot of folks have moved to the let's get English and then others later, and also how you handling a bunch of, people who go so aggressive as to like actually list and capture those international copies within the Kickstarter is like even more complicated
Right.
on the backer side. I think those are a lot of the little ones. So I'm excited. I expect a robust day. Like the campaign will launch. I'm gonna send this out, and then I'm gonna watch it. And maybe by the time someone finishes watching this, you guys will be like, but no, I'm super excited. It's worth note this is also a game that I didn't get a chance to play yet, so I'm very curious to check it out once it does come through. But yeah, man, best of luck. I hope it's awesome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for the feedback. Thanks everyone for watching.
See ya.
See ya. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.